Hey guys, today we're just going to cover a couple of ways to avoid bubbles in your work. The first thing is when you get your epoxy, you want to make sure that you flip it and just look and see if you can see a ton of bubbles in your epoxy. If so, you just want to let it set for a couple days so that all the bubbles will rise to the top and then you can start. The second thing that you want to do is go ahead and temp your resin before you start. You want to make sure that your temperature is low. So ours is going to be around 80 degrees. You want it to be somewhere between 72 and 80 just to be sure that when you mix your part A and your part B that you do get the correct chemical reaction to happen. If it's below that temperature, you're going to have a harder time and it's going to take a lot longer for it to get up to temp. If you're working on flat pours and you want that temp to get up to around 85 to 90 before you pour out, it is going to take longer if your temperatures are lower. We're about ideal at that 80. The next thing you want to do is make sure that all of your measurements are absolutely correct. The thing that I would recommend doing is go ahead and setting out 2 containers, pouring your part A in one container, part B in a second container, making sure that they're eye level, and then go ahead and pouring it into a third container. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. I want to do 30 milliliters of part A in one container. You want to make sure that that's a nice even surface. And then 30 milliliters of part B. Because of the viscosity difference of our UV+, you're going to want to pour in part B into your third container first, and then part A into your third container second. All right, so we're going to go with that part B first. And to make sure that you're not off ratio, you do want to make sure that you get every little bit of that epoxy out of your first container. And then going in with part A. And now we can go ahead and start stirring. I would recommend stirring slow. You can use a metal popsicle or silicone stick. And you just want to make sure that you're scraping the sides and not whipping your epoxy in order to avoid a lot of bubbles. Once you get micro bubbles, it's more difficult to get them out. So you just want to make sure that you avoid that as much as possible in the first place. If you ordered new resin, you got it in, and you decide that you want to use pumps with that, I would recommend either getting a new set of pumps or completely cleaning out your old set. UV+ is a different formula than the UV, and they are not compatible if you mix them together. After stirring for 3 minutes, we do want to switch to a second container. Doing that will ensure that you get it fully combined and that you're, again, not being off ratio. That can cause your epoxy to end up sticky. It can cause it to have more bubbles. It can cause all kinds of problems, waviness, fish eyes, all the things that you want to avoid when trying to get a smooth glass surface. Once part A and part B are combined, they do start exotherming, meaning that an exothermic reaction does happen, which starts to heat up the epoxy. The larger the amounts, the faster it will heat. And so you want to keep an eye on your temperature the whole time. We are going to stir for 3 more minutes, making sure that everything is fully combined. And again, we're stirring slow to avoid a ton of micro bubbles. If you want your epoxy to heat up to 85 to 90 degrees, like for larger projects, you're going to go ahead and let it set in your pot a little bit longer, keeping an eye on that temperature. If you want to keep it nice and cool and thin, like for smaller projects such as tumblers or smaller works where you don't worry about it going over the side, then you can pour it out at a cooler temperature. You're at 84 degrees now. You want to make sure that your epoxy is at least 75 degrees before pouring out.